It's a pleasure to welcome you to tonight's Idea Series webinar, Historic Pipe Organs of Oaxaca, Mexico, and the Work of the Yo-Yo. Our presenter this evening is Cicely Winter, Director of the Institute of Oaxaca Historic Organs. Cicely grew up in Michigan and has lived in Oaxaca since 1972. She became a naturalized Mexican citizen in 2008 and has been a central figure in the preservation and revival of Oaxaca's extraordinary historic pipe organs for more than 2 decades. She played the piano by ear from the age of 4 and started piano lessons when she was 7. She studied piano and harpsichord at Smith College and the University of Michigan, where she obtained a BA in music and an MA in European history, and later studied piano performance at the postgraduate level at the School of Music at Indiana University. Since the Yo-Yo's founding in 2000, with support from philanthropist Alfredo Arp Elu, Cicely has served as its director, teaching organ students, organizing concerts and festivals, and leading efforts to promote, protect, and reintegrate these remarkable instruments into the life of their communities. We're grateful to have her with us this evening to explore an exceptional and well-preserved collection of historic pipe organs. Please join me in welcoming Cicely Winter.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm delighted to be with you. And
go ahead. I'm just going to share your screen.
Yeah. Can they hear me?
Yeah.
No? Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for this invitation. I'm delighted to be with you today to talk about the Oaxaca historic pipe organs. Just a minute, we're just having a few little details here. One advance, Lou. There we go. So I'm going to give you a chance. Oh, here's some more historic organs in Oaxaca. Maybe not the kind that everybody thinks about, but these are known as órganos, these cactus. I'm going to run through the 11 slides of the 11 organs which function now in Oaxaca that have been restored slowly. And I'll give you a little background reading while you're looking at them, because each of them has a description. The state of Oaxaca in southeastern Mexico has the richest collection of historic pipe organs in the entire country. The 71 extant instruments built between 1703 and 1891 reveal a fascinating evolution of construction techniques and musical characteristics over the course of nearly 2 centuries. These instruments are relatively unaltered. Go ahead. I can do it. In part due to the geographical isolation in this mountainous state and the poverty of their communities, which precluded upgrades. 11 organs, more than in any other state, have been restored, reconstructed, or repaired and are now playable. As a group, around 40% of them date from the 18th century, whereas the pipe organs in other Mexican states are nearly all from the 19th century. Mexico's organs have been recognized as yet another manifestation of its tangible, the physical object, and intangible, the sound, cultural heritage. Founded in 2000, the Instituto de Órganos Históricos de Oaxaca, or the Institute of Oaxaca Historic Organs, by its acronym Yo-Yo, pronounced Yo-Yo, has worked actively to promote, protect, conserve, and document these organs and to integrate the restored instruments into the present-day life of their communities. I invite you all to visit our webpage, www.yoyo.org.mx, for a more detailed description of this presentation. Although many hundreds of organs have existed in Oaxaca since the first one was documented in 1544, over the course of time, most of them have been lost due to normal deterioration, natural disasters, neglect, and/or willful destruction. Two key words to keep in mind when considering the construction of Oaxaca organs: evangelizing and earthquakes. These two terms do not apply to European organ building or organ use. Organs in their churches tended to be small. The largest organs are 8-foot organs, and there are 4-foot and 2-foot organs, but no 16-foot organs. They're squat, and even the most monumental organs are modest in comparison with the organs in the urban centers to the north. So soon after the fall of the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan in 1521, Spanish galleons began to arrive regularly at the port city of Veracruz. Packed in their cargo were arms, tools, animals, seeds, and diverse objects necessary for transplanting the power, culture, and religion of Spain to the New World. Small table organs dismantled and packed in wooden crates were included in the shipments and would prove to be powerful evangelizing tools for the conversion of the native population to Christianity. Charles V parceled out. Oh, we're going to backtrack a bit. Here's the founding of the Instituto with Mr. Alfredo Harpelú, who was behind the restoration of 7 of the 11 Oaxaca organs through his foundation and also through the bank Banamex. So now Charles V, the king, Carlos Quinto, we call him, parceled out the newly claimed territory among the mendicant orders, awarding what is now the state of Oaxaca to the Dominicans. The Dominican friars arrived in Mexico in 1526 and began to filter southeastward into Oaxaca. You can see the diagonal line, cutting a diagonal swath across the state toward the coastal trading center of Tehuantepec. From there, communication and trade continued on to another important Dominican colony in Guatemala and the rest of Central America. The distribution of historic organs located in Oaxaca corresponds roughly to the Dominican route, which in turn corresponds to the earlier pre-Hispanic settlements and trade routes. This map shows the distribution of organs in the ethnic regions of Oaxaca, dominated by the Mixteca Alta, which is kind of in the northwest segment. That's the richest area of all because it was the first area on the way to the Central Valleys, which continues in this diagonal direction. The ethnic groups are mainly the Mixteco and Zapoteco ethnic groups. And you'll see in the corner how the state of Oaxaca is located in the map of Mexico. So once assembled and presumably decorated, the organs were played in outdoor processions before churches were built. Since words are more easily memorized when sung than spoken, the organ could outline the melody, guiding the singing of liturgical music in Latin in the lighter songs of devotion, villancicos, sung in Spanish or the indigenous languages. These are, the slides show two remnants of 2 open chapels in the Mixteca Alta. You have to imagine that these huge arched chambers was where the mass was being held, but the indigenous populations would be spread out in the huge open area in front of the atrium. And there may have been hundreds of indigenous people for mass conversions, baptisms, and so on. And the little first organs were used, paraded around the 4 corners of these atriums in outdoor processions before the churches were built. In other words, one of the first things that were built were these outdoor chapels. And these little processional organs coming from Spain in pieces, first to Mexico City and then eventually sent around, could outline the singing and guide the chant and help people remember the words. So they were small and portable and known as processional organs. They were transported in pieces from Mexico City to the Mixteca Alta, the Oaxaca valleys, and other outlying areas on the backs of 4 or 5 men. No 16th century instruments survive to this day, but their construction probably approximated Spanish table or reolejo organs of the time, with enough ranks to be heard in the open air. A unique document, the Codex Sierra, cites the purchase of an organ in 1552. This is just 26 years after the Dominicans arrived in the Oaxaca area. Bought it. It was sent from Mexico City to the community of Tehupan in the Mixteca Alta. What's interesting about this is in the lower left corner, it combines indigenous pictographs and Nahuatl text written with European letters and interspersed with Spanish words. The cost was extravagant at the time, 180 pesos, which so soon after the conquest was remarkable. And so another page in this particular codex cites the purchase of trumpets and banners and everything. So it just shows how important music was in the earliest days after the conquest. Here's another picture from a famous map of 1539, not in Oaxaca. It's from Pátzcuaro, Michoacan, near Mexico City. And a team of men are dragging a bell and an organ, which is the little drawing on to the left, to the new capital of Pátzcuaro, Michoacan. The church is symbolized by its sound, either the 2 sounding instruments, bell and organ. And in fact, the organ, which of course would always have been ported in pieces, is assembled. It looks like a little church itself. Another image of the church symbolized by its sound. This is in Yanhuitlan, hidden deep within the carvings at the base of the central tower of the organ in Santo Domingo, Yanhuitlan, the Dominican base in the Mixteca Alta, is the agonized face of a Moor being crushed by the weight of the enormous organ pipes. And you can see it way down at the bottom there. So now I would like to talk about the features, Iberian characteristics of the Oaxaca organs, since these small organs came from Spain, and at some point, sometimes larger organs as well in pieces, such as one of the organs in the Mexico City Cathedral. But as far as Oaxaca was concerned, it was the little organs with a 45-note keyboard and a short octave, no pedals, and mean tone temperament. Here we have examples of a couple of 45-foot note keyboards. That's half the length of a piano keyboard approximately. Another typical Spanish feature are horizontal reeds or trumpet pipes. Obviously, these do not apply to the little table organs we're talking about. These are later already installed on stationary organs. And more commonly, we'll just find the holes where they used to exist. Because once an organ stops to function, the first thing to go are grabbing those horizontal reed pipes and blowing them and tossing them. And that's the end of that. Okay, now we're going to talk about particular characteristics of Oaxaca organs. Most noticeable are the rounded protuberances on the sides of the lower case, referred to as hips. They exist on all stationary Oaxaca-built organs. Here's organs built in Oaxaca, that are in Oaxaca, built in the state of Puebla. You can see the contrast, the straight sides and the curved hips. Origin and function of the hips. Well, As I mentioned before, Oaxaca is earthquake territory. And if you look at organs, many organs in Europe, for example, that are just enormous, the way the pipes fan out in the upper case. And actually, the lower case doesn't really have much going on except for the keyboard mechanism. And so the lower case is narrow and the upper case is much wider. The top right picture shows a Oaxaca organ from 1721 that it does have a narrower lower case. After this organ, they were never built like this again. And I think it just became clear that they were unstable during an earthquake. So hips, art imitates life. There we have some hips. Question is whether it was purely decorative or in fact, this feature distinguishes them from all other Mexican organs. And they existed in the earliest organs in Oaxaca and must have originated earlier because we don't have any organs left from the 17th or 16th century. In Mexico, there's no 16th century organs that exist. Why this trait emerged is a mystery. They may have provided ballast during an earthquake, but seem to be decorative rather than a structural feature. They softened the overall angular contours of the organ case, but also made the organ look more impressive and distinctive. Another feature of Oaxaca organs is a Maltese cross engraved in the first element of a series. Usually the first pipe, it can be on the facade, and here we have it with its date underneath, which is lovely to have that information. It can be that they're tiny, I'm afraid. The first pipe of an interior rank, they can be on the first roller or the first pallet of a series. And I'm sorry that you just can't see it that well. Maybe in the lower right corner, you can see that little Dominican, we call it a Dominican cross, by the way. It corresponds to the 18th century, which was when the Dominican influence was at its strongest. In the 19th century, neoclassic area, you don't see these crosses anymore. Another feature of Oaxaca organs, lower cases of large stationary organs, elaborately decorated with unusual non-religious imagery. Here we have the Basilica de la Soledad and Yanuitlan, which are profusely decorated throughout. We are quite sure that the Oaxaca Cathedral and the now lost organ in Santo Domingo were equally decorated. And it's not religious imagery, which is interesting, but it's sort of phantasmagorical with these birds and people turning into plants. It occurred to me, though, that the lower case of the organ is a working area. It's got the keyboard and it's got the stops. And to have religious imagery on the lower case wouldn't be appropriate if it's got all this activity going on. Religious imagery tends to be on the uppercase with religious statues or painting or other elements on the pipes. Here's another one. This is Santa Maria Tiltepec, one of the earliest organs. You can see these strange figures jutting out from the sides of the bottom of the uppercase. Here, as in many organs, the lower case is completely austere if it's not elaborately painted, as I showed above. Those organs, by the way, are so important that they just could not have, they had to be decorated all over. They're painted, they are not carved. Even with the grandeur of these organs, there's no comparison with the grandest organs in Mexico City, which are opulently carved all over and gilded. This is mining financing. These are much richer areas, but Oaxaca organs make up in elaborate painting, some of it even imitating carving, for not having opulent carvings all over the facade. The lower case by being unpainted in most cases or undecorated, makes sense because you don't see it from the choir loft. There's usually a balustrade, and because of the angle, what you see basically starts at the upper case. Oaxaca has a collection of 2-foot table organs from the early 18th century. They're usually painted with religious imagery, and all are located on Mixteca Alta. They, I think, harken back to the design of the very earliest organs that came in on the galleons. You can see they're kind of intimate, they're didactic, they're cheerful, and they're 2-foot table organs, usually with accessory toy stops, drums and birdies, pajaritos. They have their stops are activated by slider tabs on the sides. And then we have the same idea, but graduated to 4-foot organs on the processional model. They're too heavy to be moved around, but they could be moved temporarily if there were a leak in the roof or a problem. But we've got quite a few of those, and they're decorated. They seem to be sort of an unusual Oaxaca feature. By the way, just going back here. Yeah, the one in the lower corner is from 1772. It's kind of the end of the Baroque period, but up on the top, it's got, what is it? It's the sprinkler and the basin for dispersing holy water. So it's still got a religious symbol up there. Okay, and these 4-foot table organs are often profusely decorated with saints, archangels. The lower left corner shows a part of the door of the organ of San Pedro Chiatoni that was overpainted in the 19th century with these grotesque, horrible faces. And you can see that there's a helmet and face of a little archangel peeking out from underneath. And we think it was very similar to the Sautla organ above. But to be able to properly chip it off is a little problem because overpainting is also historic. Here we have San Dionisio Ocotepec on the top two slides. The one on the left depicts Santa Cecilia, the patron saint of music, often depicted with an organ. Here she is on the door of the Ocotepec organ playing that same organ. So it's kind of a picture within a picture. You know, if you look carefully, you can see the little bellows in the back and the way it was painted originally. Angel musicians frequently painted on the doors, inside the doors, playing various instruments, but the most common instrument is the bassoon. And the reason is the bassoon was often used to accompany the smaller organs, especially the 4-foot organs, to reinforce the bass line of the chant or the hymn or whatever was being played. Because the organs, in fact, did not have a huge number of ranks. They might have 6, 7, up to 8 for if it's a large organ. But the bassoon was common and even found still old 19th century band instruments, including bassoons, that indicate how important they were. Profuse decoration of the lower case. Once again, nothing religious here, but this is the two lower slides show the backs of 2 4-foot organs from around 1730. Another feature are painted faces on the pipes. We've got a bunch of these, mascarones in Spanish. What's interesting to note is that the entire pipe is painted with flowers. That is a Oaxaca feature. Here we have more of these faces on facade pipes of 4-foot or 8-foot organs, but look at the flowers. This is not typical. Oaxacans love to decorate. Those of you who have ever visited here, it is now kind of considered the artisan or folk art capital of Mexico. And it's just in the blood to fill in any space, especially with multicolored flowers. Here we have some examples from other organs that have the faces. In other words, having a face on an organ pipe with the mouth of the pipe emitting the sound was a European feature. It's nothing new, but to have decoration on the entire pipe is something unusual in Oaxaca. In fact, here's the yo-yo office chairs decorated like organ pipes. The case decoration is very easily divided into the Baroque 18th century and the neoclassic 19th century. So here's the busy, opulent, gaudy Baroque features. And then here we have the neoclassic. You can see this, the hips are still there. Sometimes you'll have columns, sometimes to indicate the neoclassic. Often they were they were usually not painted and easily recognizable because of that. But if they were painted, it was often after the original construction. Keyboards, which started out with 45 notes, be extended, and the short octave was eventually eliminated. And once 56 keys were reached from C to G, bass C to G treble, that becomes sort of a standard. But in between, for a while, there were 51, 53, 54. We go to E, go to F. It was kind of a gradual process, but once the 56 note keyboard, of course, with no short octave, became sort of fixed. Here's the neoclassic type designs. Instead of religious carvings, you see tassels, curtains, little denticles and under the moldings. And this, what's lambrequin, I call it a drip design, all over the place. And you even see it, as you see in the lower corner, on Oaxaca buildings of, say, a turn of the century, around 1800, into the 1800s. Throughout, it's just this design shows up every place, and it is a typical neoclassic design. So now I've talked about the organs. I'm going to talk about the work of the yo-yo, what we do to reinforce and support this wonderful collection, and what we can do to help it out, to protect it. So protection and documentation. What we see of those organs whose cases still exist, luckily, they may be so empty, but at least the case is there, the skin is there, and usually after all the pipes have been pulled out and useful pieces of wood and so on, usually the wind chest is still there. And if the wind chest is there, we can really reconstruct in our imaginations how that organ would have been. We also find things like this. We find just a wind chest, pieces, often salvaged, earthquake, often salvaged from earthquake destruction. And what I mean by that is that the earthquakes may crack a roof over the choir loft. And so the local people take the organ, and without knowing how to take it apart, they lower it down on ropes down to the church floor, and then raise it up again. And during the process, either going down or going up, the organ falls apart. And the lower left, just shows a sample of a surprising amount of pieces that were salvaged. But then again, many of them disappeared. What's interesting, though, is how some of these how some of these organs were repurposed and saved. So we here have an organ case converted into a confessional in San Juan Tetepac. You see the little kneeling areas on the sides. The whole middle part was changed so to put a door in, and there's little window sliders on either side for the confessions. Organ cases were also used to store papers in the church and above, and that's how the upper right is the way we found this organ, and all repainted with red enamel. It would have had religious figures painted on it. It was of that group of the early, say around 1720 to 30, but we think it was one of several victims during the Reform period of the 1860s, where it was a separation of church and state. The church properties were reclaimed by the Benito Juarez government. And it seems that we've got evidence for religious images just being scraped off. Because under this red enamel, there's nothing, but it never would have been originally painted that way. And then the one down below is this lovely organ in Oaxaca that was used in the priest's bedroom for a nice piece of furniture. I suspect there's more of these around in people's houses in Oaxaca that were just used as nice pieces of furniture. Above, we see the upper case of an organ reused as an altarpiece, and below, wind chests that were used in wall construction. The one on the left was an outdoor kitchen, and the wind chest on the right was just part of a wall. And we found a couple more in piles of garbage outside the church, rescued them, taken them up into the choir loft. This organ is interesting. We're talking about protection. This organ was moved outside, the top right corner. It was a left corner. It was left outside for quite a while and deteriorated badly. It is an amazing organ, the tallest table organ, 10.5 feet tall. And if you can barely see in the top right, it was painted with angel musicians, very rustic, very village, and moved back into the church. And there it is with the doors open in the church. 2 facades, the principal rank was divided front and back. It's very odd construction. But what's amazing about this is that it's a processional organ on steroids. It's a huge table organ that, it was some local construction. And believe me, in Oaxaca, when the villages are isolated and people want an organ and they hire somebody to do it, they can go way off track and come up with something that you have never heard of. So this is a very tall organ, unfortunately deteriorated while it was left outside because they were building a new choir loft, and then it didn't fit up the stairs, so it was left outside. Here's this other very first important step of returning organs to the church on the upper left. Doing it properly, we take out all the pipes and all the heavy components and then reconstruct it up there in the choir loft. San Juan Tetepac, the confessional, was also just found its way little by little out of the church into a corner, and was found when it was no longer used as a confessional. It was used to store candle holders, candles, church vases for flowers, and empty bottles of mezcal. The one on the bottom shows, this is one of the most significant organs at the bottom there. 1743, it's the one that showed the Maltese cross with the date of it wasn't that one. This is a 1743, not 40, but it's precariously situated on on a deteriorated balcony. Most of the weight, luckily, is over the stone wall. But I wanted to mention, by the way, that there's a strict sort of rule in Mexico about church goods cannot be moved out of the church. They have to stay in their community, in their church. There are no organs, no Oaxaca organs are in museums or otherwise. They're all in their original churches. This must have been, I'm looking at once again, the San Mateo Yucuqui, probably it has a population now of less than 200 people. But the church and the organ are magnificent from the mid-1750s. So that became a very poor area and not too many people are left. I'm afraid, as somebody said, it's just going to turn into compost someday. And it's got so many original components, but we can't do much about it. We leave labels of the INA, which is the National Institute of Anthropology and History, on the organs, as well as a data sheet. And amazingly enough, these sheets may still exist when we go 10 years later to do conservation work on the organ. The organ may be a mess, but the pages are still there. The organ may be loaded up with stuff inside, even though the list says that yes, to restrict access to the organ, keep the area clean, to yes, install screens on the windows so that birds and other animals don't come in, and yes, to cover the organ if construction is going on. No, don't try to clean the organ. No, don't take pieces away from the organ. And no, do not store things inside the organ case. And so we do find this on the organ, which is full of stuff in the case, but that's okay. It's still there. They respect the label. They don't maybe read what it says. Anyway, they are protected by federal law. And so now, theoretically, anybody caught damaging them could be sanctioned. Ongoing risk, fire, political conflict. The one you see up above Santiago Tlazoyaltepec in when was it, about 2012, I guess, somebody left a reflector lamp face down on a pile of documents we found and just left it there after illuminating the atrium in front of the church through the choir loft window, and just left it face down, and the switch was down below in the church, and inadvertently somebody turned the switch on. The organ, got caught on fire, and because it was a Sunday and there was a town meeting right next to the church and smoke was billowing out of the window, the men ran up with their soda bottles and put out the fire. Luckily, it was fully documented, and it did not damage the two labels on the inside of the right wall of the organ that has a label with the name of the organ builder and the date 1724, as well as a later 19th century intervention. But it's one of the only organs that has its date on it. So there it is. Very sad, but we try. Down below is the Church of Santo Domingo, which those of you who have visited Oaxaca probably have visited. There used to be two organs facing each other, two huge organs. And the cursor shows where the bellows were behind the organ. And you can also see that there's an area that has no decoration. It just shows sort of the stones behind it. That's basically the silhouette, the profile of the organ. And we think that might have been the lesser organ. Big churches had two facing each other. Anyway, it does indicate where the former organ had been. And for sure, it was richly decorated all over. So this next section is about organ conservation and documentation. And the first step when we go to a village is to make contact with the local authorities. In this town of Olotepec, which is in the Mixe, M-I-X-E area, mountainous area, where many of the older men on the council don't speak Spanish. So in this particular town, I talked to the man here, the president of the council, and then he would translate into Mixe to get permission to have access to the organ. And so we went and we straightened out pipes, put them in, cleaned the organ. It's one of the later ones. And here we are at the end of the day. The amazing thing is during our first visit to this particular town, the former organist was still alive, so we could talk to him. Here's the work we do. Cleaning the choir loft. This is Tlaxcaltepec, where the IOHIO organ was burned. Cleaning up the choir loft, cleaning rats' nests and birds' nests and dead birds and animals out of the inside of the case, sometimes piled up with bat guano. It's not fun, but since we did it once, it's not so bad when we go back. Straightening pipes, there's the before and the after. Washing pipes, cleaning the inside of the case, or the outside of the case, I should say here. Going through decorative carvings, analyzing and attaching them whenever possible. And we've just found that leaving pieces loose out of their place puts them in danger. So whenever possible, if it's possible to straighten pipes, we try to stand them back up. Otherwise, they're at risk of they disappear. We take professional photos. This is for an upcoming catalog in process. Here's the organ. Oh, well, yeah. This organ is being photographed down below. And you see we were working at night actually, and that's the finished photograph. So this organ in San Antonino El Alto, before and after conservation work, the bellows had been dismembered. They were just in a pile of scraps, and there's the before. Here's the after. We stood up the wooden pipes and some interior pieces, added the missing hip, and rebuilt the bellows frame because the bellows were there. This is work in process. And here's a series of before and after shots of organs, the way we found them, and then after we did our conservation work. So you can appreciate this series. It often has to do with standing up pipes, replacing decorative carvings. Filling in. Maintenance work, organ builder Halbert Gober has been helping us recently, especially before our festivals, just doing a checkup and tuning of the organs. And this is a perennial problem of woodworm damage in various organs. And here's Isai Guzman, one of my assistants, who's injecting the termite holes. This is actually going back to 2014 in Tlacolula, where we'd set up a shop for the restoration of that organ. And the Oaxaca organs continue to surprise us. So the keyboard in this particular organ in Ejutla the organist decided he wanted it in the back. And so they once again moved it to the front. But here, you can see the back of the organ had nice doors, and he cut a peephole into the rollerboard so that he could see the priest and see what was happening down below and coordinate the music with the priest. On this organ in San Pedro Tidal, the stop knobs are positioned horizontally. So the whole mechanism of the trundles and everything inside is unusual. And it's also got a foot pedal for the bellows. It's a very, very odd organ. Once again, these are all handcrafted organs, and the commissions, the contracts for them it might specify to a certain degree what the organ is expected to have as far as maybe its different ranks, but there are a lot of surprises. Here we are in Gevea. Keyboard is in the back. There it is, in perfect condition. It's from 1745. Angel musician playing a bassoon, as I mentioned, on the side. This is, you see the front, no keyboard. And, it makes no sense, really, but there it is. And then this is in Tlacolula, where the stops are pulled on one side and pushed on the other. So here they are not engaged, and here they are engaged. So you see these 3 stops are pulled out here, whoops, and pushed in on the other side. So this is a challenge for people who come to play the organ. Have to get used to this sort of unequal, or what do you call it, lack of equilibrium between the two. Another thing we do, promotion of the organs, promotion publications. We find this document was in the Oaxaca Cathedral, and we generated basically its publication. It's a notebook of a Oaxacan nun of the Sor Maria Clara del Santísimo Sacramento. She compiled the pages, probably written down by her uncle or her grandfather, who were organists in the Oaxaca Cathedral. And it's real organ music. I mean, there is not much of it because organists accompanied. They basically, did antiphonal playing back and forth with the priest, or they accompanied the liturgy, and they stood up a lot of the time. They just improvised, and they didn't write it down. So this is a very rare document that was published by Calvert Johnson and is available, in fact, through the Oregon Historical Society. Excuse me, I take it back, the Wayne Leopold. The OHS, you can do it through that. And it's the music is light, it's galant style, it's about 1800, and we play it a lot. Research in the communities, doing conservation work on the organ in San Bartolo, Yautepec, with all these different 3 sets of bellows. In fact, we noticed some wooden trunks on the table. And lo and behold, and one of them was full of old Gregorian chant books from the 18th century. Here they are. And one of them, you can see at the top, that's the last page of the Gregorian chant book, was used as a back cover, interior cover, for 2 pieces of deer skin from a pre-Hispanic codex. There just scraps of leather that were thrown around, and they used it to, interestingly, it's a pre-Columbian religious little people and symbols and glyphs combined with a Gregorian chant Catholic liturgy book. Let me just go back for a minute, and what you see down here are the drawings. This was an amazing discovery, to find a codex in that part of Mexico. So also in that trunk, that wooden trunk, was a music book, a notebook by either a seminarian or a musician who was in a Dominican evangelizing center nearby, near the town of Yautepec. And he wrote down the music that he was hearing. It's 4-part harmony. A lot of, there's masses, and there's also lighter villancicos, as we call them, lighter liturgical processional pieces. It's been published now by the Alfredo Harpelou Foundation. It's free and it's online. And you can also listen to the music. And in our most recent concerts, we have sung with a quartet, some of these pieces. So they are charming, and the ones especially in Zapotec, in the native language. So Aurelio Tello, musicologist. So yeah, it's just ongoing with it. We find piles of 19th century band music, old 19th century instruments, imported from France in the mid to late 19th century. This is when Mexico was so influenced by France. So we collaborate with musicologists and people who are experts in old band instruments. These are in remote places, really remote, where there isn't much left now, but they had a lively music tradition a century ago. We have also found these two, top and bottom, coincide. Wait a minute, excuse me. No, these are three. Okay, this is one of 4 clavichords in a very remote town. This is looks like a homemade forte piano. Also in a town in the Mixteca Alta, it looks like it was, just locally built. And then this looks like a box it's in front of an organ, where the organist would stand or sit. And inside was a table forte piano. So these discoveries indicate a very lively musical, wait a minute, I want to go forward, sorry. Lively musical tradition in some of these towns that are so empty now. Another, promotion of the organs. We do concerts. We've done 5 this year, or from last year, excuse me. And I wanted to put this one in. It's maybe a little fuzzy. This is the Oaxaca Cathedral organ, which once had an opulently painted base, but the woodworm destroyed it. And this is the organ in the Mexico City Cathedral. Now, can you find the organist? He's standing there. He is one of our former students who we taught from the time he was 15 years old, and now he plays in the Mexico City Cathedral. And he's right there. He's to give you a sense of, this is big for Oaxaca, okay? That we call it a monumental organ. This is the Mexico City Cathedral organ. So when I say Oaxaca organs tend to be relatively small, that indicates it. We also have organ festivals every 2 years. The next one will be in February of 2027. Here's some of the concerts from the one, our 15th festival this past February. We had 8 concerts in about 5 days on 8 different organs, and nearly over the course of time, 2,000 people, we calculated, heard at least one organ concert, many for the first time. And it's very exciting when you see an audience full of a lot of local people from the town. Concerts and field trips. We also program, you can see we get to have a full house. We go take people to see unrestored organs and concerts galore. These are visits to unrestored organs from former field trips. We have CDs. These are available through the OHS. A series of postage stamps. Why not? And this was a book that I did of Oaxaca folk music, which is transcribed for keyboard. And it's we play this a lot with a percussionist, and everybody knows his music and they sing along. So thank you very much. That wraps up the talk. If there's any time for questions, I'm happy to hear them.
Thank you so much for your fascinating presentation and for all of the conservation work that you do on the organs of Oaxaca. And I think that there is a question in the chat. The question is, how did you come to be involved? And yep, so that's the first of 3 questions.
Everything is by chance. I was a pianist I liked early music and I had studied harpsichord a little. And I met Edward Pepe in 1999, who was a co-founder of the Westfield Early Music Center with Lynn Edwards. And we'd had an earthquake that closed the theater where the piano was, and I didn't really have much to do. And he was an excellent organist, so we started the yo-yo together. And he knew about organs, and he knew about playing, and he'd been involved in organizing a project already. But I knew about Oaxaca, and I'd organized projects in Oaxaca, and he would come down periodically. So we got that together. And then after 3 or 4 years, he became a sort of a real scholar, doing research, and he still plays in organ festivals in Mexico. So we started it together.
Oh, that's so nice. And Robin also asks if she saw gold on some of the cases, and she also asks were the keyboards sometimes made from ivory?
Okay, yes, gold leaf gilding is indeed on applied on some of the carvings of the upper case of the most important organs. And ivory, the covers of the keyboard are usually bone, not ivory. And they'll be made of wood. They might have that little face, the front carved slightly, but it's almost always with bone covers, and then ebony or stained cedar sharps.
And then her final question is, how do the local people respond to your work? Are they open to helping with the restoration?
Uh, it's complicated. The local people usually don't pay any attention to that piece of furniture in the choir loft that is just left up there, and the choir loft is closed off to the public and usually just used as a storage area. And they don't have any memory. In most cases, they don't have any memory of what it is or what it sounded like. In a few cases, the organs were played in the 70s, but after that, none of them worked. So there's no connection to the organs. And so what we do when we go in there and clean, I mean, we spend the whole day just cleaning the choir loft first, cleaning the organ, putting pieces back in, and people are coming and going and watching us the whole time. And to tell you the truth, they're amazed at what they see at the end of the day, because the organ, has a more dignified look. And especially if we can replace pipes, it might sort of mean something, but they really don't know what an organ is. I mean, they call it a piano at the end of the day, or sometimes like a ropero, an armoire. But the thing is, it's free. We go in there and we clean up part of their church, tell them that they've got to keep the choir loft clean if they want to keep their church clean. And of course, if they've been dismembered, it's from the people in the same town. Once the organ stopped working and they didn't have anybody to fix it, I figured, well, whatever, this could have been a century ago. And it's, in some cases, soldiers were barracked in the churches and they would melt the pipes down for bullets and so on. But that became sort of a myth. It happened definitely in some places, but not all. It was mainly just people in the town, the what do you call it, the metalsmiths taking the pipes. So what we try to stress is that the organs were commissioned and paid for by their ancestors. It was by their own people, by their great-great-grandparents, who made a big sacrifice to pay for the organ. And to respect their commitment, they should take care of it. And they always ask about, I mean, it can just be a pile of pieces. Can it be fixed? Well, we tell them that right now what we want to do is just conserve it, keep it clean. Maybe some days, to be perfectly honest, there are a handful of organs that are almost complete. For whatever reason, the towns have respected that. Unfortunately, they're in really far away places. And we have right now, there's 11 organs that function in Oaxaca. We pay attention to maybe 7 or 8 of them, maybe even fewer. There's no organists. That's the problem. They are not getting played that often. Visiting organists come to town and offer concerts. The mass is played, not as often as it should be, but the organs are just not played as they should be. So the idea of any more restorations, even though we try to give people hope and not say sort of no, 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 you've got to hold on to it. You never know. You never know in the future. There might be some wealthy person in your community who decides that he wants to finance the restoration of this organ. And there it is. Just take care of it in the meantime.
Well, thank you so much, Cicely. It looks like that is the end of the questions for this evening, but we wanted to give you just a huge thanks for tonight, and that will end tonight's presentation. Have a great evening.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.